In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest or most unsettling experience of your life? One night I wake up and hear a weird noise in my room. It's dark, and I sit up. I feel a weird rush past my back when I sit up, and assume it's my cat. I lay back down and continue to feel something moving, and hear noises that are nothing like my cat makes. I sit up again and feel another rush past my back. Then I turn on the light, see nothing, turn off light and lay back down. Continue to hear the noise, sit up one last time, and feel another rush in the small of my back. It turned out it was my hamster. He had managed to get out of his cage, which was downstairs in our front bedroom. My bedroom was upstairs. So he managed to get out of his cage, get down from the desk he was on, climb up the stairs, and get onto my bed without our cat noticing or getting injured, or biting me while on my bed. Figuring out it was him turned into a full-scale awakening of my parents as I needed help to catch him. My hair has never stood up on my neck as much as it did when I felt that rush in the small of my back. To this day, we had no idea how he got up there and we always assumed he just did it himself. He was also cable tied into his cage from there on out. Happy Halloween. Hee hee hee. While I was growing up, my grandparents owned a Victorian home built in 1901. It's a very neat house with many rooms and lots of beautiful architecture. When I was about 8 or 9 I became very interested in the paranormal. I still am, but I'm a lot more skeptical about most of it being true. However, as a kid I had a very overactive and open mind. I wanted to believe that my grandparents' house was haunted and would do little ghost hunt with my cousins and whatnot. One time, my grandparents were on a camping vacation and my parents and I were watching the house. For some reason my grandparents had moved their room from the master suite to one of the other rooms and I got to stay in the room that was usually theirs but had now been turned into a guest room. In this room there is a little pipe that you can talk down to the kitchen through. Back in the early 1900s this is how the head of the house would ask the servants to bring something up to the master bedroom. Well, I was sitting in the rocking chair in the room probably drawing when I hear this spooky moan over the tube straight out of a horror movie. Cautiously I get up from the seat and respond. "Daddy? Is that you?" Nothing. I go back to sit down. A few minutes later, the moan happens again. I get up to respond again. "Mama, stop it. Is that you?" No answer again. By this time I am freaking the fuck out. Then I hear the moan again. I ran down the stairs hysterical and crying. Both of my parents denied being responsible for the eerie sounds, so I began bawling my eyes out, completely terrified. I'm telling them I want to leave, that I can't sleep in that room. I am ready to nope out of there right then. This goes on for about a few more minutes when my mom breaks down laughing and confesses that it was her. Needless to say, I was very pissed off. She nearly caused me to crap myself. I think it's pretty funny looking back, but my 8-year-old self was scared shitless, smiley face. I have a few stories I could share but will keep it to a couple. 1. I was sleeping over at my aunt and uncle's house one night. I don't know whether there is any truth to it but, supposedly, their house was built on the site of a Native American burial ground. Anyway, I was in that semi-sleeping state where you are asleep but aware of what is going on around you. I rolled over and shifted my head further to one side of the pillow literally as a glass votive cup from a sconce above the bed fell right where my head had been. To do that, it would have had to have been lifted out of the sconce and dropped. Everyone was asleep, the house wasn't shaking or anything, there was nothing inside the sconce that could have made the votive work its way out. It was glass, likely would have cut up the side of my head and face if it had actually fallen on me. 2. I was in visiting my mom when I was home from college, a place she had moved after I graduated, so not my childhood home. Anyway, although I had never had problems with it before, there was a room in her house on that particular trip that just gave me the absolute creeps. I had no explanation for it, just really felt uncomfortable whenever I walked into it. Unfortunately, this was the room I was supposed to sleep in. I had a little schnauzer and she always slept on the bed with me. That night, I woke up in a cold sweat although the temperature felt like it had skyrocketed. I thought I was being ridiculous, but then I realized the bed was shaking. My schnauzer was standing at the end of the bed, staring at the corner of the room at nothing and seemingly so petrified that she was shaking. I hopped out of bed and ran to crawl into bed with my mom. The dog wouldn't got back to that part of the house again. I was in Boston for a conference this summer, and stayed in an older hotel in a small room. I had headed to bed early to try and get some rest for the early start time the next day, around 11, but I couldn't seem to fall asleep. I was laying in bed, my eyes closed, when I felt a tug from the end of the bed. I opened my eyes, but I didn't move, convinced I had imagined it. I felt another tug, and the sheets brushed over my foot, cementing the fact that something was pulling from the end of the bed. My heart started racing, and then came a series of short tugs from the end of the bed. I screamed, threw the sheets off, knocked my bedside lamp over in a rush to try and turn it on, and stood up on the bed. I eventually jumped off the bed, turned all the lights on, and tried to calm myself down. I looked under the bed and around the edges, hoping a rat or mouse was to blame, but there wasn't any evidence of that. I've never been so terrified in my life. I barely slept, and switched rooms the next day. I recently posted this in another thread about creepy experiences too. I get so unsettled just thinking about it. I've had a few experiences in my friend's house I used to stay with when I was in boarding school. Backstory is that their house is very old, and the man who lived there before died upstairs in one of the bedrooms in his sleep. 1. A few of us went to my friend's house for a long weekend while at school. Her brother has a California king bed and he was gone for the weekend, and there were 4 of us girls, so we decided to all bunk up together in her brother's room. This coincidentally is the same room the man died in. It was right around the time the movie White Noise had come out, and we had just watched that movie all together prior to the sleepover. Anyway, fast forward to bedtime, when my friend makes it a point to close and lock the closet door in the room from the outside, because if it wasn't locked a draft would rattle it. We are all getting ready for bed when my friend turns off the light. I'm not sure what happened, but we were talking and all of a sudden the alarm clock radio started going crazy and it turned to static. I was on the outside edge of the bed, so I'm trying frantically to untangle myself from the covers and get out to turn the light on. I turned the light on and turned around, the closet door was wide open. We didn't sleep in that room that night. 2. I frequented my friend's house on the weekend because I was from out of state and she wasn't. Same house, different bedroom, same backstory. I was staying in the spare room downstairs around 3 a.m. when I heard what sounded like TV chatter right above me. I thought, great, my friend is up, I can text her because we can't sleep. I texted my friend, no response. I still heard the TV though, so I went out into the hallway to look upstairs. Friend's room was right at the top. I didn't see any lights, hear any chatter, or anything, so I went back into my room and didn't think anything of it and tried to get to sleep. I heard the chatter again, so this time I listened to see if I could hear what it was. That was when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. I got up excitedly and peeked out to see if it was my friend, and it looked exactly how it did before. No lights, no nothing. I still heard footsteps. They have a tall, steep staircase, so I waited and watched. I hate being the feeling of being afraid, but for some reason I was intrigued. I opened my bedroom door all the way and went to the bottom of the staircase. The footsteps came all the way down the stairs, went past me, walked through the kitchen where I followed it to their basement door. The door didn't open, but I heard heavy footsteps on the wooden stairs as whatever just walked past me walked down into the basement. I went straight back to my room and hid under the covers. My oldest sister and I never really got along. We would argue for the sake of arguing. This of course made us difficult children, and once we were old enough, I think I was 10 or 11, she was 12 or 13, my mother felt it was easier to leave us at home rather than corral 4 children at the grocery store or what have you. Anyways, so my mother's room and her room were at opposite ends of the hallway. The hallway then goes to the living room. We began our usual day of arguing about dumb shit. This time we were in our mother's room facing each other perpendicular to the hallway. At the exact same time in our peripheral vision we saw an old woman in a pink nightgown walk from her room into the living room. We both shut up, screamed if we both saw it, and slammed my mother's door. We still fought the rest of our childhood and beyond, but we both saw that old woman that day. I have some more stories that make me think my sisters are haunted lol. This happened maybe 6 months ago. I was lying in my bed trying to fall asleep when I feel an intense and sudden pressure on my legs. I know many will parrot back how this was sleep paralysis, but almost immediately after this I went to push myself up and felt a very strong force push me back down onto the bed. At this point my head is down in the pillow and I'm way too terrified to turn around. As I'm frozen, the pressure on my body begins to build, and once it reaches a crescendo I feel a hot breath blow against my ear and saliva drop down onto my neck. After this everything stops. I peek my head around and see that I'm alone, but I could still feel the spit on my neck.